Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. We share international insights, perspectives, and a little levity on things such as leadership and mindset for Monday Mindset, travel and the travel business on Wanderlust Wednesday, and sports on Fanatic Friday. You can plan on each episode being between 20 to 30 minutes in length. And please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on all major platforms, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, you name it, we're on it. Please share, follow, comment, all that fun stuff. And of course, we want to thank Nick Menard and Associates from Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
You're welcome. Hello, winners.
Hello. So here we are about halfway through the onset of the first month in 2025. For those of our winners who missed last week's episode, we talked about having resolutions and we shared some of the resolutions we have. Today, we're going to talk about articulating a vision and setting big bets for your organization, whether you're a small business entrepreneur or whether you're part of a larger organization. Having a clear vision that you're sharing with others and then taking actions towards that by narrowing to the critical few that can help bring that vision to reality, we think is a very important topic. But any high-level thoughts you want to share before we get kicked off?
Yeah, I mean, we said that all the time between you and me, the vision and purpose is so important. So I think it's very important when you have a team as a leader. If you don't know and understand 100% the vision, how can you share it with anyone? And I think it's very purposeful to have one, to understand exactly what you stand for on the vision piece in order to be able to share with others and make sure that everybody understands and know how to actually live that vision.
Yeah. And, it's kind of funny. You just touched on something that's going to lead to our segment, Quotes and Quips. And the first quote comes from Steve Gilliand. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Steve. But thank you for this. And his quote is, "Without vision, you have no direction. Without direction, you have no purpose."
There we go. So it's like I knew. No, but again, a lot of time when I'm talking to business owners or leaders in different organizations, they can articulate really what needs to happen for them to be successful. But when we talk about the vision, they have a pause like, that's a good question. Well, how can you have people within your company, within your organization, within your region to understand the why we're doing things or the direction we want to go if they don't understand the vision? So I believe that we need to understand 100% first, set the table about what needs to be achieved and how to deal with that. And that's how the vision will come to life and we can share that with others.
Yeah. And I feel sometimes people get confused between vision and mission. Like a vision, in my mind anyway, is always a statement of where are we going? And usually the shorter, the more action-oriented, the better. The mission is kind of like our purpose for existence. But I think sometimes people muddy the waters a bit and they come up with these vision statements that are really mission statements and they're lengthy. And if you went down and asked one of your teammates, hey, what's our vision? And it was based on a mission statement, most wouldn't be able to, to say it, right? Because It's too long. So you got to keep it short, crisp, and paint the picture.
Yep.
All right. So that was the quote. The quip is, again, we like to add a little levity on Two for the Win from time to time. And so we like to include a quip, which is usually a tongue in cheek or something that has a little humor to it. And this one is from Will Rogers. For those of you who don't know, Will Rogers lived, I think, in the 1800s, but maybe early 1900s as well, was a comedian and actually did a lot for charity. If you ever went to the movie theater and you had the donation for the Will Rogers Institute, that's the Will Rogers that we're citing. So anyway, Will Rogers has a quote or quip, if you will. Even if you are on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there.
Yeah, I love this. I love this because it's a lot of levity, but it's so true. It's so true. Definitely in the the life we live in, 2025 now, everything is continually changing. So if you are happy where you are, you actually don't stay where you are, but you're digressing. And it's the same with this quip says as whole, like if you don't adapt and if you don't change little tweak left and right to continue to move forward, you will be run over or passed by from your competitors.
Yeah. I like this one. And of course I had just because the way my mind works, for better or for worse. Like when I first heard that quip, I'm thinking of Snively Whiplash, who was the old evil cartoon person that used to tie the damsel on the tracks, and then somebody would have to come and untie it in order for there to escape. So even though that's not exactly what the quip is saying, but that's the vision that I had in that head for whatever reason.
I thought about the beep beep, the coyote. What you say? Beep beep.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it is true. We've talked a lot about on our Monday Mindset in particular about the importance of taking action and just keep the momentum, keep doing things, moving forward. Because it's true. If you are on the right track and you stall, eventually another train's going to come and run you over, or the analogy I always use is you can either get on the bus. The bus is going to head towards the destination. You can either get on the bus or you can be left at the station, but either way, the bus is moving forward. So that comes to mind. But bringing it back to vision, I guess when you think about vision statements and when you're articulating a vision to somebody, what are some of the core things that are important for you to make sure that are embedded in that vision?
Yeah, for me is, again, the way you are communicating the vision. Because if you don't truly understand and believe the vision, people will not believe what you're saying. So I think having 100% confidence in what we're doing is the right thing to do will translate very well in the communication of sharing that vision. So I would say, number one, make sure that you 100% believe in the vision that you want to portray. So if it's your own business, it should be easy because it's your own. But if you work for a corporation, sometimes you don't always see eye in eye with the high level vision. But what you're going to do as a leader for your teams, for your region, will be important that the vision will be exactly what needs to be done in order to reach the vision of the company. Mm-hmm. So it may be tweaked a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's gonna achieve the results needed for everybody to be successful. So that's number one. Number two, when it comes to vision, how can you keep things simple by delivering the message that people understand directly what the vision is all about? So it's the analogy of if you try to explain within 15 seconds and everybody look at you like you come from another planet, well, it's probably not the right way to communicate it. A vision should be very clear. Like if one image or one 10, 15 seconds elevator speech, you should directly understand, oh yeah, that's what needs to happen. That's all it needs to happen. And if it's not the case, then, transform it a little bit, make it simple. Like if you say to a 10-year-old, he or she will understand. It's the same here. So I have a clear communication piece and have also like something very simple that people can explain easily to others as well. Mm-hmm. And that's two common. There's a lot more, but I will stop with those two and I will give you the table for you to explain on your side, what is important for you when you share vision.
No, thanks. Yeah. And I agree with those things you're mentioning. I think for me, what I've done, is sometimes people will create a new vision every year. And I feel that sometimes is more disruptive than helpful because it becomes a little bit like Baskin Robbins. What's the flavor of the week going to be this time? Shout out to Baskin Robbins if you want to sponsor our episode. Hit us up on 2forthewinpodcast@gmail.com. But in all seriousness, I've kept my vision the same. So for the organization I'm at, I've kept the same vision regardless of what business unit I've gone to. And that vision is fostering people-centric cultures and high-performing teams. I believe those things are symbiotic. You don't have to have one at the behest of the other. And like most things I do in my life, especially when it's written or auditory, is very deliberate. So there was a reason why I didn't say fostering high performing teams and people-centric cultures. People-centric cultures are first. And we talked about this in previous podcasts about Richard Branson's quote about, I take care of my people take care of the client. So I've always believed in, and Peter Drucker said this as well, or culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. So fostering a people-centric culture, that's first for a reason. And it's most critically important, and high performing teams, because we are in a for-profit business. So you have to be performing well. And that not only means performing well for the business, but it's also performing well for people in their professional development. How are they growing? How are they developing? So anyway, that's been my high level vision. Now the big bets change yearly because the needs of the group I'm leading differ. So when I first became a manager at the organization I'm at, and then we had this, the number one thing that group needed was performance improvement. The culture was good. People liked each other. They got along. They trusted each other, but the performance was lacking. So we focused on driving performance. Other groups I've joined, it was about culture and morale. Did they understand the purpose of the role and how impactful that role was to the organization? And so it's focused more on culture, and others would have been blend. But I believe that having that vision the same is consistent because some people have followed me from groups to groups. So now they know there's a level of consistency. And also it gives people malleability to think about, okay, what are the couple of things we do need to focus on? How does it tie to the vision? So it's high level enough to give a clear direction, but it's also high level enough so they could tie more tactical things to it and create that synergy.
No, I love that. And having been under your leadership, I know that it's 100% what you do. So yes, winners, you listen firsthand to a fantastic leader who have been around a lot. And I agree with that. And unfortunately, in the past, I've been to leadership where every year it's something new on the table. Oh, let's pivot. Let's do this. While I understand that we need to pivot a lot, because otherwise, like the quip says, if you stay still, you will get hit or you will be passed by. I do believe that the vision should not change drastically. It should be the same vision, and we just change the component around, but the vision should be very similar along the way. And for a lot of organizations, even though there are tweaks happening, usually the best practice should not be different year by year, unless you are maybe a startup. And then but when you have like a well-standing business or well-standing organization, even though you will change, the detail around, the vision and the best practices should be very similar now and 10 years from now. I truly believe so. And when you change the vision or we change the big bets constantly, then I believe that you have a culture of, oh my God, is something new, different. And that's very hard to get a good culture and positive mindset within it because they believe like what's going to be next. Yeah. I'm not getting finally good at understanding everything. I understand what my work is all about. And then next year I will have to do something completely different. It's demoralizing. And I think that as a leader, you need to have some good continuity in what you do while implementing the little tweaks needed to go from where we are to where we want to be.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things that's been weighing on my mind a lot, I would say over the last year, is trying to lessen change fatigue, because there is a lot of rapid change. And even with some of those strategic decisions I'm making about our business, it's actually amplifying change. But I feel it's the necessary direction we have to go at this time. And I know we both believe in better to rip off the Band-Aid than to have a slow burn when it comes to change. So better to get it done and then everyone gets settled and move forward versus it's like a constant thing in the back of everyone's mind is disrupting the business. But I agree. I think the other thing that always struck me is at times when I would hear certain leaders, not necessarily at the organization I'm at, but other stops along the way in my career journey, where they have this vision and it reads like a War and Peace paragraph. And then if they were to turn around even 10 minutes later after articulating it and ask anybody in the audience to repeat it, nobody could do it. And so it, like, I'm not saying mine is fantastic. It's just one that I like. And I'm a big believer in balance, like the scales of justice and having things in balance. So I like having people-centric cultures and high-performing teams. I think it's easier for people to remember. When you think about advertisers, really good advertisers do this great with slogans, right? Like you think of Nike's, just do it. Like 3 words and it said so much and it's easy to remember. So whether you're a leader or you're part of a organization or part of a business and maybe not in a leadership position, but you're applying this to your personal life, think of something short, sweet, action-oriented as a vision that's easy to remember and could be that compass guide for you as you think about strategically and tactically how to make that vision a reality.
No, I think the vision that you mentioned, like people-centric organization, high-performing team, it gathers everything that needs to be done. You have to have a culture and you have to have the results and combine both. And it's very easy. And I know, in the company we are in right now, like everybody know that in your side of the business, like, so there's no surprise when someone hear that, they know it's coming from Will. So, hey, that's great. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So pivoting here a little bit, can you share with our audience some example maybe in your past where you had some difficulties yourself or the organization that you were a leader under, how when the vision is not clear, what can happen, to the organization, follow up that? Do you have an example of something like that so that can be better for your listeners or winners?
Yeah. Back when I was in the mortgage industry, we had a leader who wasn't very clear in the vision. The vision was very generic. It was grow fast. Well, you can do some things with that if you have some clear big bets underneath it that help support it. Unfortunately for this person and for those of us who worked for this person, there was something underneath it. It was just sell more. Well, okay, great. But I think what ended up happening is then you leave, it's so ambiguous that people have a multitude of different interpretations. And then what you have is people going in 1,000 different directions, right? Or they think what they're doing ties to that vision, but maybe it doesn't from the leader's perspective, and you don't have synergy. So we talk a lot in our organization about mission critical priorities of a business, right? And then what are the key performance indicators or different things that lead toward, making that mission critical priority have progress or come to fruition. And that's the problem. When you have a very vague vision, is that it actually doesn't bring people together and working in different ways, but in a common way to make that vision a reality. It's like octopus arms, they're flailing all over the place. And I think the other thing is it doesn't really give a sense of a nobler motive for people to aspire toward. Like I've had people who have made comments about the vision that we talk about, like having people-centric cultures and high-performing teams. I very rarely had anyone come up and say, "Oh, I love the fact that your vision is a high-performing team." I've had a lot of people come up and say, "I love the fact that you have a people-centric culture." But again, I feel those things are both. And I think people then come to work with us because we are high-performing, but we're high-performing because we focus on people first. Mm-hmm. And when you have a vision that's too ambiguous, it's not inspiring. It's not appealing to people's nobler motives. It's just ineffective. And I think those organizations, whether it's a small business or a large organization, they probably struggle with attrition. They probably have a lot of talented people that leave because they get an extra 5K or 10K in salary, or maybe a little bit more. But I've had people who have taken massive pay cuts, or who have declined opportunities that would have increased their pay because they believe in what we're doing. They believe in our principles and our vision, and they stay, and they feel that they're building towards something. And I think that's the other benefit of having a clear vision, is not everybody, everyone's situation is different, and I never fault somebody for doing more economically for themselves or their loved ones. Like I don't hold any personal grudges on anything like that, like to each their own. But I do know of many people who could be making more, and they don't, because they believe in the sense of purpose and the vision and what we're trying to do. And I'm extremely grateful for that. But I think people who don't have that kind of vision, they probably aren't able to keep those people that otherwise might stay if there was a clear vision and purpose.
I love that, because when you were talking, I was going to jump in, when you were down, I didn't want to interrupt you. So what's going to happen is you lose your best people. And you mentioned attrition. So we are on the same line there. No, it's not a Q&A, but I will ask you another question.
Sure.
Because you mentioned big bets. So I want to make sure that people understand what big bets mean, number one. But number two, more importantly, is when you have a lot of idea, because I can see big organization, they have that. But when you have a smaller business, you have all those ideas about what growth is always there. Like growth is for everybody. But you may have so many ideas. With what you should be starting with? That's the question, because maybe we have some winners here, listeners who are thinking, okay, well, I want to set up something very clear for my teams, but I maybe don't know where to start. Should they start with understanding the big bets first, or should they start with the vision and then coming from vision down? So would you go the direction bottom up or up to bottom?
I personally believe in top down in that way. Like if I'll think of when I started my mortgage brokerage, I didn't really have a clear vision. I did have some clear big bets that I wanted to hit. But then again, I think at the apex, I had 12 loan officers, 3 processors. No one stayed. As soon as they got a better commissionable deal, they went to a different place. And it's because I didn't have a clear vision. Even if you're a small business or an entrepreneur and you're one person, you're looking to grow your business, I would start with the vision. Why should people join you? Whether it's a client or a prospect, I should say. Why should a prospect join you as a client? Or if you're looking to build your business, why should a potential employee come and work for you as an employer? You got to have that vision. I mean, you see it all the time. You can have, I'm sorry to digress, but this just popped in my head and I think it's important to share. Again, I'm on social media. That's how I consume my information now. In the past, I used to go to the library. I haven't been in the library in 15 years. Now I go to social media and I read things that I follow. And there was this person who was speaking. I think they were in Europe or in UK, because they kind of had that accent. But this gentleman was speaking and he was talking about the importance of why not to say no to something. And this lady in the audience was a hairdresser, and she charged I guess 800 euro to do someone's face. And he asked her, he's like, well, do you ever have anyone ever ask you to discount your rate? And she says, yeah, all the time. And he goes, what do you say? She's like, no, that's my rate. And he goes, wrong. And he said, let's flip roles. So I'm going to be the hairdresser or the makeup artist, and you're the prospect. And she's like, okay, so how much do you charge for the facial makeup or whatever? He says, well, 800 pounds. She's like, oh, could you do it for 400? And he goes, well, let me ask you why, what's the occasion for getting this done? She's like, oh, I'm going to a wedding. And he goes, oh, are you married? And she's like, no. And he goes, oh, is there a chance your ex might be at this wedding? She said, yes. He goes, well, do you want to have a look that's really going to showcase to your ex what they're missing out on? And he flipped it, and he flipped it from price to emotion. And, and you could just see her face even when she said it, like, wow. And yeah, like how many people now would accept that price because it aligned with an emotive aspect that they wanted to get out of it versus just, whatever. And why I want to tie this back to the vision and big bets is you have to know your why. Why are you in business? Why are you employed at a certain company or doing a certain role? Have that. Then when you think about the big bets, and I don't always change the big bets every year depending on the progress made.
Can you explain sorry to interrupt you, what big bets is for people who don't understand?
A big bet. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. So big bets are like, what are the key strategic plays or tactical plays that you want to accomplish in the next year that you believe will help further the vision? So for example, when I talk about our vision of people-centric cultures and high-performing teams, if there was a cultural issue on the team, I would have 2 to no more than 3 things that I would say, these are the things that we need to focus on in the next year to help augment the culture, to bring it forward. If it's a performance thing, then what are the 2 or 3 things? We could all list probably 15 to 20 things that would be good to do over the course of the year. And doing any of those 15 to 20 would move the business forward or culture forward. But that's going back to then economic prioritization, which we talked about in the previous podcast episode. Not everything is worth the same. And so for the big bets, we talked about this last week about listing 10 goals and then picking one and then going on it. Kind of a similar concept. Like out of those 15 or 20 good things to do as a company, self-employed organization, whatever, what would be the 2 or 3 that at the end of the year, if you made significant progress, would have a positive impact on the culture performance? And that's what I try to narrow it down to, because then that way it gets very simple for people to understand, okay, if we don't do anything else, which rarely in life could you ever say that, right? Like it just doesn't work that way. But in theory, if we just focused on making progress in these 3 areas, our business, our culture would be better than what it was at the beginning of the year. And I think that makes a huge difference to people because it simplifies things and you add some economic prioritization so that it's meaningful. And last point, and then I'll pause. L&D is a tough one. Because a lot of times people will focus on, if we just trained and upskilled our people with certain things. And it's true, like investing in your people is always a good thing to do. The challenge with learning and development programs is sometimes it doesn't neatly correlate to outputs where you could define it. So I think, like, for example, one of the big bets that I have for our organization is to foster greater levels of entrepreneurship, which is different than entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, people working for an organization, but thinking of their role and their territory as a business. Well, part of that is, L&D type aspects. Like, how do you get people's mindset to think of that way? How do you train them in order to do that? Not always the easiest to do, but you can think about, okay, the big bet is I want people to think about their role and operate in their role like a business owner and have that mentality. That's the big bet. You can always disseminate different things that help to lead to that.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think that it's very clear now, for winners here. So basically you come up with the vision, like the big vision on top. And in this case, in your case, is top performer, like top performer team and people centric. And so those 2 may have 2 to maximum 3 big bets. So things to work on. And then from those big bets, you present that to your whole organization. And then individually by region or by territory or by side of business, you can then work on steps to get those big bets, established. So you have different level. So people understand the big picture. And then when we get between themselves by teams, they can go drill through and then really understand, okay, what can we do in order to achieve this? And it's going to help with the vision eventually. So top down, like you mentioned, I think is very clear. Well, thank you so much. Again, we can, like everything else, we can talk about it for hours, but we're already on time.
Yeah.
So I hope that it helps you. That's really the goal of this podcast, is to help you understand maybe things that you didn't, or maybe improve things that you already know, or maybe start over something in the future that you can start thinking about steps to become an entrepreneur or to improve your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah. The best day in order to foster continuous improvement and change is always today.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Don't put off to tomorrow. It can be done today.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, there we go. So there you have it, our winners. Another episode of 2 for the Win. Please be sure to follow us on whatever platform you prefer. We're on all the major platforms. And thanks again to Nick Menard and Associates for sponsoring today's episode. That'll wrap up today's Monday Mindset. Please join us on Wednesday for Wanderlust Wednesday. And in the interim, continue to progress forward, winners, and enjoy the journey. Take care, everyone.
Bye, winners.
Bye.